All right, happy Tuesday, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Adam Lazor. I am the Regional Director of University Relations at International Studies Abroad, ISA. We are a program provider, a third-party provider, and that we partner with multiple universities across the United States and offer a wide range of opportunities for students to get experience abroad. So thanks for joining me today. This is actually a spin-off of my most recent NAFSA regional presentation that I presented in Sacramento at the Region XII conference called Reimagining the Future of Education Abroad. And my colleague came up to me and asked me if I wanted to do this webinar because we had such good feedback from my live presentation that I wanted to see who else was interested in this type of topic of reimagining the future of education abroad. So what we'll do is we'll start off, I'll basically give you a run through of my presentation briefly, hit on some of the main points that I've brought up in my imagination, and then we'll open it up for discussion through either the chat box, or if people are comfortable with it, we can unmute it, but we'll play that by ear after the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and start, and once again, thank you for spending your 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, wherever you are with me. So how do we reimagine something that doesn't exist? I get this question a lot when I was first going through my idea and brainstorming what I was going to talk about reimagining the future of education abroad. And when I presented this, I used the example of standing at a NAFSA regional conference, and the presentation hall. We all know, if you've been to a NAFSA regional or a NAFSA conference, they separate the presentation halls into rooms. And the presenter goes off on their topic, and usually the rooms vary from anywhere from 15 to 30 people. And the question I asked, well, how do we reimagine something that doesn't exist? Because the future is an idea, so really anything's possible in the future. So I asked the room of people, which were about 30 attendees, and in the last 15 years, for those of you who have been going to these conferences for a while, how much has changed in the atmosphere at NAFSA conferences? And surprisingly and overwhelmingly, everybody said it's been the same for as long as they could remember, from many of the people that have been to conferences year after year. So when I say reimagine something that doesn't exist, imagine what we have right now in our field, and keep doing the same thing year after year, and you can kind of imagine what will be in the future. So take that and reimagine what you would hope the future of education abroad will be or could be. So in my mind, I've broken it down into a few subsets here of technology and sustainability. And really that could be referred to as culture, program development, and that could also be referred to as the students, and then roles and responsibilities. And that's really looking at the international educators. So whether you're on the university side or if you're on the private side, it's looking how we're going to define our roles and responsibilities moving into the future. So one of the biggest interests of mine is technological innovation and sustainability within our field. And I've been in the field for about 4 years now, and one of the things that I've noticed that sometimes we lack is a little bit of technological innovation. And during my live presentation, I was fortunate enough to have a fellow come from Charleston, South Carolina, and he had just created an app called Reika. And if you haven't heard of it, you should check it out, because it's a really unique application that's gaining some traction in the education abroad field right now. It's essentially like TripAdvisor, but for students that travel, whether it's study abroad or personal travel. And it provides them with a rating system to say, this was my favorite restaurant that I went to while I was studying abroad in England, and I suggest you go here if you travel here, but it's only for students. And it's very unique because we don't have a lot of applications or community builders through mobile apps right now in the education abroad field. So when I look at technology, I see the exponential growth that technology has been going through since the dawn of time, essentially, and as you can tell, every year we're coming out with new technology that gets more advanced, more complex, and our students are using it more and more because they grew up with it. They're the digital natives. So when I focus on the exponential growth of technology, how are we staying on top of this type of technology that our students are so used to using, that are growing up with these screens in front of their face? I was fortunate enough to grow up in that time where I actually lived a part of my life without internet, and most of you probably did too, which is a great experience, but sometimes it gets a little hard to relate to the students that haven't lived any of their life without the internet. So really taking a look at this exponential growth of technology, and then going down to, people always say, staying ahead of the curve. I don't know if you'll ever be able to stay ahead of the curve of technology because it's just growing so fast and changing at such an exponential rate. So that's why I say ride the curve. If you can ride the curve and figure out a way to include, adapt, and adopt this technology that is coming out today, then this will allow us to stay relevant to our students who are constantly changing every 4 years. I always use the quote, and people laugh, from Dazed and Confused, where Matthew McConaughey says, "I get older, they stay the same age." And I think that's perfect for a field like education abroad, because our demographic is anywhere from 17 to 21, majority of it, and then you have some outliers, whether it's non-traditional students or gap year students, but really we get older as the international educators, and our demographic is staying the same age. So we need to think about how does that come into play with staying ahead or riding the curve of technology. And then throwing in the sustainability aspect of that, of fear nothing and save the planet. And that was really my plea to take a stance on sustainability, both environmentally and within our field, to make sure that education abroad is a sustainable field. Part of my job is flying all over the Pacific Northwest and handing catalogs to students and promoting programs and collaborating with universities. And one of the things that I've noticed in the last 4 years is that there's a lot of waste within our field. Think about a typical study abroad fair. You go there, you have your little gimmicks to try to get students to tables, whether it's your fidget spinners or your luggage tags, and then you have tons of catalogs. And these students, they're used to reading this content, this information on their electronic devices, yet we still put such an emphasis on paper material. And what happens at the end of the study abroad fair, if you don't get rid of all your material, go over and look at the recycling bins and the garbage bins, and you'll see a huge stack of piles from all different providers and program promoters. And you have to think, how can we change this? How can we innovate and utilize technology more to help our field be more sustainable? So when I focus on technology and sustainability, I look at how can we reduce our impact on the environment, but also how can we adapt and adopt these current technologies that our students are so used to and maybe we might not be as fluent in. And then I move on to program development. So program development is really about the student, and it could be literal program development, like designing a program for students to go on abroad, but also how are we using these programs to ensure that their learning is exactly what they expect. So them, not us. Our sole purpose for creating study abroad programs should be the student. It shouldn't be what we feel is best for them. We should utilize the students more to be able to understand what they're expecting to learn, their learning expectations, and utilizing data from program participation to understand what can we do better. So it's really about them and not us. And then we move on to serving and not pleasing. And when we're building these programs out or creating these opportunities for these students to become more enriched in our global society, who are we looking? We have to define a line of, are we trying to please certain people in the realm of, maybe you have to please your administration or your stakeholders, but really I think our jobs are unique as international educators. We are given the opportunity to open students' minds to an entire world of learning. So I view it as a opportunity to serve. And with the serving aspect, I think it's important that we really dig down deep into that, because when we create these programs and we look at what these students are experiencing on the ground, we might get caught up in are these numbers making, or is this program good enough for the students? And the easiest way to do that is to ask the students and develop those relationships and understand that we're there to serve the students and make sure that they're getting the best out of their international education. And then I move on to competitive collaboration, and this is one of my favorite things to talk about, because if you work with providers, and even some universities compete in this realm, we see a lot of the same programs over and over again from multiple organizations. And everything's all about competing. It's all about, who could get the most students here and who could get the most students there, and we do this better than them, or our university sends more students abroad than this university. And competition is great. I love competition. I am a former track and field athlete of 8 years, and I think competition is very healthy. But I think what's missing is collaboration among the many, many international organizations out there that are trying to provide these experiences for students. So when I talk about competitive collaboration, I think about ideas like the NAFSA conference, for instance. Well, instead of going to a conference and attending sessions and meeting with colleagues that you've been in the field with and made friends with for many years, what if we changed the outcome of these conferences and made it more of a collaborative effort, but also maybe putting some competition in it, where international educators came together to solve issues that are actually going on in international education, and made sure that when they get out of that collaboration environment, that they're actually taking steps forward to make sure that these things are actually happening. And then the competitive aspect, imagine if all of the private study abroad organizations got together and they competed to raise the most money for a specific scholarship, let's say a diversity scholarship. Now they're competing with each other because obviously one organization or one university wants to raise the most money among the rest, but at the same time they're all competing towards the same thing, which is providing more opportunities and more funding for students to go abroad. Now, that's just an idea that I've had, but sometimes when I see the environment that we work in and study abroad fairs, there's a lot of competition, but there's very little collaboration among the people that are competing with each other. So kind of stepping back and seeing what can we do to enhance the student experience and get more students abroad by working together, essentially. And then finally, roles and responsibilities. Where can we use technology to enhance our efficiency and productivity? Two things that humans are absolutely terrible at, but we can utilize technologies that exist today to help us doing work within our offices. If you received the email from me earlier this morning, I asked a few questions, and one of the questions was, what do you wish you could do more in your current role that you don't have time for? Like, you truly wish you could do more of it. And I deal with a lot of study abroad advisors who just don't have enough time to advise on study abroad because they're too busy doing administrative tasks and inputting data and inputting forms and doing budgets. And some cases, they don't even have enough time to talk to their students about where to go. They have to rely on catalogs or external sources, such as me in a regional director position. So where can we use technology that already exists today that maybe you aren't using to enhance our efficiency and productivity? And at the end of the day, if we can do that, it'll enhance our relationships with our students. It'll allow us to really dive in and talk to these students more and get more personal with them and understand their goals and what they really want to achieve when they're studying abroad. And through that, enhancing relationships, we do it with creativity and meaning. So freeing up some time with these administrative tasks and this data input, which can all be automated essentially, but it's finding the right resources to be able to do that. So looking at creativity and meaning as the bottom line of your job. I know when I first got into this field, the reason I got into this field because I wanted to inspire others. I wanted others to go abroad and feel the same feeling that I felt, which was just pure joy when I got to meet people from another culture and understand how they lived and what their problems were and what they find happiness in. And if we could free up some of our time to understand that, like, that's probably the reason most of us got into this field, because we think that being a global citizen is super important. Language acquisition is super important. All of these things come together, but when we don't have enough time to get to be in front of students, how are we ever going to enhance or improve our goals? I think the Generation Study Abroad goal is over 600,000 students by 2020, which may be hard to reach, but we're making progress there. But where can we continue to innovate and utilize technology and shift our roles and responsibilities of our current jobs to say, you know what, maybe I need to spend more time in front of the students instead of in front of Excel. Like, we have technology that can help me out with this. It's just some places have not been exposed to that, and that's really the conversation I'm trying to start here is what are the current technologies that you're using in your office or your organization? Where do you lack, and what do you really wish that you could do more of in your job? So that was a brief overview of my presentation, and I'd love to maybe just open it up, because we have about 9 attendees, open it up to the chat box, and if anybody just wants to type in what they think what's most important in education abroad that we need to continue evolving. So why do you think it's important that education abroad continues to evolve? And feel free to just type in your answers, and just so other people can see. I think we have a wide range of attendees from across the country, and it would be great if some people could get some things out of other people's answers. So why do you think it's important that education abroad continues to evolve? And think about that in terms of technological innovation and adapting and adopting to these new technologies. So feel free to throw that in the chat box and send to all participants. And then maybe even if you're thinking about that, what is the biggest challenge that your office is facing technologically? Where do you think you can improve? What do you have the capacity to do? And then even what part of your job do you truly wish you could spend more time doing? So I'd love to see some answers in the chat box from some of the attendees to see what we're asking. I'll start typing those out so you guys can see those as well. Emma, thanks for letting me know that. I think I fixed it, so you should be able to, it should be enabled now if you want to just type some answers into the box, and I'll write those questions down again. And so Emma, you believe our students are changing and the way we process information as a society is changing. In order to effectively communicate, we need to all adapt accordingly. I think that's a great response, because obviously the way that we are used to communicating with each other, depending on the medium, is completely different than what our students are used to using to communicate. One thing that I notice when I deal with students is that even if they answer an email, they're still responding like they're responding to a text message, which is always unique, because you always want to try to keep it professional, but they're always trying to get it off as quick as possible because they need to take their next Instagram post. So if anybody else has any answers, I'd love to see them in the chat box. And we'll let this go for another couple minutes. So for me, I think it's very important for the education abroad community to continue evolving, because our students are constantly evolving. As I mentioned earlier, we work with a demographic that stays the same age. Every 4 years we get a new shift. And if we're not evolving with them and adapting to what they're used to and adopting their technology specifically because it plays such an important role in their life, then we run the risk of being left behind in some ways. It's still, oh, okay, so thanks, Emma, thanks for that. Chat's still disabled. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and say their answer through their microphone, that'd create better conversation. Thank you, Emma. Or you could chat to the panelists as well. So a couple different ways. Feel free to unmute yourself or send me a message and I'll read it out. Hannah asks, how will artificial intelligence play into the future of international education? Well, the interesting thing is a lot of people think artificial intelligence is this crazy IBM robot that was created, Watson, and is beating people in chess. But really, if you're touching or using your cell phone right now, that is artificial intelligence at its finest. If you speak to Siri or Google Talk, that is artificial intelligence at its finest. Facebook, Instagram are all using artificial intelligence to understand patterns and trends in what you like and what you don't like and who you follow. So I think it's already playing a large role in international education because we are using our devices, our mobile applications, to connect with others all around the globe. Things I've specifically focused with AI in how can it help us with our daily tasks. I was reading an article not too long ago that talked about Microsoft Excel, and they are pumping AI into Microsoft Excel, and you can imagine they're going to call it Smart Excel. And with that, it's going to learn your behavior and your data that you're pulling, and it's going to be able to help you with your spreadsheets. And I just think about myself when I do some work that involved the same data set and I have to make several different Excel spreadsheets. I wish that it just knew what I was doing and would put those numbers in there when it saw a certain university and how many students are attending a certain program. It would know that already. And we kind of do have that in some cases, but I think AI is going to help us do our jobs a lot better and free up that time so we could spend more time connecting with students and advising students. And the more students that we could connect with and advise, then the more students we could go abroad, we could get to go abroad. So thank you, Hannah. All right, well, we're gonna bring it down and we're gonna start to close it up. I apologize if some of you had issues with the chat box and writing some of your answers. I think the best way would have been probably just to send it privately to me and read it out, but it's kind of the first time we're doing a discussion piece in a webinar, so kind of working out all the kinks. Honestly, thank you all for attending and spending the last half hour with me. It was great to speak to more people that are interested in this topic of reimagining the future of education abroad. And I'd be happy to send these screen slides that I showed earlier to you through email and elaborate more on them, because I'm always looking for people that are innovating in their offices and taking risks and seeing what they're doing to stay relevant and stay connected with our students to enhance the participation and experience of our students. So thanks for attending and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.